Neat is my married name, and I am a law professor at Golden Gate University School of Law in San Francisco. I was born in the Los Angeles area, but I am now in San Francisco. And I'm also the founding director of a new center that we've just launched called the Blockchain Law for Social Good Center. And so just briefly, my background, I went to New York University School of Law. When I graduated from NYU, I moved back to my home state of California, and I clerked for a judge in San Diego. I then worked as a poverty lawyer at the Legal Aid Society with foster children, and then went to a corporate law firm. So I've done a lot of weird things with a law degree: government, public interest, corporate law. And then went into academia in 2006, where my research focus was on ethics in the law. And I got interested in blockchain in 2017 at a family dinner when my brother, who is an entrepreneur like Edwin, started trying to explain to the family what his new blockchain company was about. And no one understood anything. And one by one, people got up and left the table. And I was really interested in it. So he drew the Bitcoin network for me on a napkin at the table. And I started wondering, what is the law around this? How can you regulate a decentralized technology? And so I looked into the law, and at that time, end of 2017, early 2018, there was not enough law to create a class. I wanted to teach this, and there just wasn't enough law to justify a 2-unit seminar in a law school on it. And so I just dove into the research, and I published a couple of articles about this and the ethics of this. And based on that work, I was appointed to the California Blockchain Working Group in 2019. So we were a 20-member advisory group that advised the California legislature on how California could try to harness this new technology. And then last summer, if you follow politics in the United States, and I don't blame you if you don't, because it's extremely stressful. But last summer, the debate around blockchain and cryptocurrency was all about the crypto scams. Nothing about the what I call the non-sexy use cases of blockchain, right? Data storage, and like putting government data on a blockchain or using a blockchain for digital identity. That's not in the news. What's in the news is Terra Luna and all these other scams. So that's why I decided we need to start educating lawyers, law students, regulators, and lawmakers about the non-sexy, non-financial use cases of blockchain. And so that's what the Blockchain Law for Social Good Center is trying to do. We've actually just launched, and it's been an incredible demand for our trainings. I'm training a lot of government offices. I'm helping to some of the legislators working on this. I've been advising. So it's been really exciting. It's been a very fun way to be in this industry. I'm the only one teaching this blockchain law class in San Francisco. Berkeley, Stanford, blockchain law. And so that's about it. I'll put our Blockchain Law for Social Good Center website in the chat so people can take a look at it.
Great. So, Almudena, tell us about you.
It's fun because I think we have very, very similar career paths, at least some parts, and also I think the same passion for blockchain legal aspects. I pursued a very also diverse career. So I spent some years in Germany in academia, and in a research center at the Max Planck Institute, and then I moved to Brussels and worked on public policy at European level at CEPS, at the Center for European Policy Studies, and then moved to the private sector in finance. So I had a career there, with different positions at international level. And then I went to the Spanish Central Bank, or what would be the Federal Reserve. So more working from the also policy side in financial markets. And there I had the first insight on blockchain, because I had to write a piece on Bitcoin in the early years of Bitcoin already, but it was more from this public policy perspective, and I didn't follow it that much. But all that way in parallel, I co-founded a social innovation center called Impact Hub in Madrid. And I was always working in parallel and helping there and helping entrepreneurs build their businesses around social impact. And there, a couple of years later, I met in 2016, I think, one entrepreneur who brought a project on blockchain, and I got fascinated. And I thought, this is a game changer of society. And I've been always very fond also of social impact and, you know, the more macro impact of technology, of business, of whatever. So I got into it very much, and I started receiving these type of projects, and I very quickly noticed that there was kind of this crypto world encapsulated outside the system. Of course, I mean, Bitcoin was built to overcome the system or to bypass the system or whatever, so it made perfectly sense. But I saw the potential impact of the technology in the connection with the system, so or applied to our industries, our businesses, our social needs. And I thought this was amazing, the potential power of changing the rules of the game and making us all having new opportunities, also in terms of social inclusion and other issues. So I got into it completely, and I again noticed that all these businesses that slowly wanted to build business cases linked to the system, to the real world, to the real economy, to the real companies, they were not taking legal aspects into account, and they were building their business cases without the assessment of any lawyers. And when I started talking to them about the importance of doing that, then we couldn't find any lawyers either understanding, not almost wanting to understand, because as soon as they got close to blockchain, they kind of panicked and and went away. So that was the reason why I funded the Blockchain Intelligence and the Blockchain Intelligence Law Institute, to start creating first a legal understanding of all these phenomena, the impact in society and the legal impact of this phenomenon, and also how to make it work, make this technology work within the system. And this included or needed, to interpret the current legislation, because we didn't have a specific body of laws or regulation on blockchain technology. And what we had was absolutely, of course, not developed for that reality. So it was not easy to apply these pieces of legislation. So we were forced to interpret, this technology or the use cases, the reality built by the technology to interpret the legislation to make it fit, but it was sometimes not so easy. So it was important to build a common understanding among lawyers. There was also not hardly literature. And so we created this concept of labs, which are public-private environments, where we meet, we discuss, we agree on what is logical, what not, what might have some risks or not, and how to interpret the legislation. And also with public in the sense of also regulators, supervisors that had to then deal with the cases, and they were actually not knowing how they could do that, or how they should do that, or how they should understand the phenomenon. So we worked around that, and then of course we needed to build a body of lawyers able to follow, assess the actual projects, to build them in a sustainable way from that legal perspective, and also then to be valid for supervisors and regulators. So that was the origin of this certification, which we have with the Bar Association of Spain, or with the Federation of the Bars, because they were very focused on digital law and how to build capacity among lawyers on digital issues. And now we're going into the 24th edition. We have a very interesting methodology, which then afterwards maybe I can share with you. And we try to get all these certified lawyers and also others that haven't done this certification into these collaborative activities. And then we also have consultancy. We are working with the European Commission on specific blockchain projects, but also on legislation through the understanding of the legal aspects of blockchain in the European Blockchain Observatory and Forum, which is the organization built or started by the European Commission to get more knowledge and create more knowledge and link academics and private sector around blockchain issues. I am academic member of INATBA, which is the European Blockchain Association, which is also initiated by the European Commission and is trying to build this bridge between public policy, regulators, and the private sector. And also in Spain, I'm a board member in the Spanish Blockchain Association. But what I mean by that is that I think there is a very nice phenomenon now, which is there are many organizations or initiatives trying to bring together regulators, public authorities, and the private sector. And I think it's very much needed. We've also assessed some ministries, the Treasury in Spain, around these issues, because there is a need to work together, because this is a far too complex phenomenon, not very much known, with many technical aspects for which maybe the capacities, the internal capacities, are less present in the public authorities, and we, I think, lawyers also can kind of bring that bridge to all these parties, to regulators, business, and techies, let's say.
Thank you, Almudena. So Edwin, tell us about you, please.
So I'm gonna be just brief, so we can engage in conversations, which is the interest of the session. I started myself as a mergers and acquisition lawyer. I was working in a law firm, just dealing with relocation and restructuring of companies, and somehow I ended up in tech. I was given a data protection, which back in the day, pre 2014, I would say 2013, it wasn't making that much sense as to how companies were dealing with data and how everything was moving. This led me into the technology field because there was a big need at the time just to understand the data flows of companies and how people should handle them. And I ended up in legal tech here in Spain, one of the biggest competitors of DocuSign, which DocuSign is the masterpiece of electronic signatures and electronic contracts. And I started playing with technology. So I was inputting everything I knew as a lawyer and becoming more of a technologist. And in that sense, 2016, we got some European funds, and I started leading the R&D department. And the R&D department started establishing as to how we can embed contracts or electronic signatures, timestamps, evidence, certificates, and all such into the blockchain. And that was 2016. 2012, 2013, I had a friend of mine who was a miner in Bitcoin. I really didn't understand anything. But in 2016, I called him up and I was like, hey, remember all these things you were saying? Like, it kind of makes sense to me now. And based on that, I started playing along how the blockchain evolution was happening, and the chains and the Ethereums and the certifications, and how everything is played into the legal, because you have everything into a very strict environment, very illiquid. And then suddenly you want to digitize and codify everything that is legal into something that is completely automatic by the coding itself. So that was super interesting for me. And I created another project, which I actually was my first venture. I sold it because I wanted to go into completely codifying legal contracts and establishing some automatizations in the back. I got an opportunity to sell it because some people wanted it. I was like, okay. And then I went into, okay, so this is my time. I'm not gonna do something that it's too offline, or it's not that the contracts are offline. It's just that I want to go full on digitized. So I enter and founded Bricken, which is now a tokenization platform. And what we do is we digitize any kind of assets with the possibility of embedding or companies on chains. So we're transforming share and equity into tokens. And that's basically how I entered the blockchain space. And now, well, I'm also a professor in different universities. I also leading one of the Binance Masters in Spain. And basically, education for content is super big, right? I think the three profiles that we have here, one of the biggest aspects that we have in common with the legality is that we like to spread knowledge, because it's through spreading knowledge that you can actually create new people that believe in blockchain, which hopefully that people manage to become politicians, legislators, and understand that everything that is tech-wise is for the good of the world, and it's not should not be created into like the enemy. Like, so that's myself, and thank you very much for this conversation, and very nice to meet you too.
Bueno, pues veremos mañana.
Okay, thank you so much for your introduction, Edwin. So now we know a little bit more about you and your link and love for blockchain. And the first thing I would like to, can you give us some like key ideas on what is blockchain and why legal professionals have to learn about this technology? So who wants to start? Michelle, do you want to
Sure.
answer? Yeah.
Well, it's hard to say what is blockchain in a short 2 minutes. So I'll just give my breakdown, and I'm really curious to hear the methodology that you're using for teaching, actually. So this is going to be, I'm going to learn a lot today. So I think the best way to look at blockchain is simply to think of it as a ledger. It's a distributed ledger of accounts. So, when people say ledger, you picture like an old book with like transactions happening. But if that ledger was on a computer, the idea that it is distributed means that each of us can have a copy that is updated in real time on our computers around the world. So I'm in San Francisco, you folks are in Spain. We can have a ledger on our computers that is distributed around the world. Each of us attending this conference could have a copy of that ledger running on our computers that is updated in real time. And that is the nature of the distributed ledger. Obviously, that raises lots of problems, right? If all of us can see it, can all of us update it? Could all of us tamper with it? And that is where the genius of Satoshi Nakamoto and the Bitcoin network comes into being. Because if you're going to have a distributed ledger, you need to find a way to make it secure. And that's where the cryptography comes in to the blockchain, or to this distributed ledger technology. You'll also see it listed as DLT, distributed ledger technology. The technology itself is really revolutionary in the sense that it has three main things that you need to focus on. The first is that it's transparent. Each of us could take a look at the Bitcoin network right now. And in fact, in my class, on the first day of class, we pull up a viewer to see what's going on the Bitcoin network right now. You can see the transactions happening in real time. The second, of course, is this distributed nature of it. Here in California, we have a lot of natural disasters, as you may have heard. Wildfires are a huge problem for us. If our ledger was living on one computer in Sacramento, our state capital, and the building burned down, then we would have a problem, right? But the idea that this is distributed across the world means that even if something happens to my computer in California, you all still have copies of this distributed ledger, right? So it's transparent, we can all see it, it's distributed, it's available. But lastly, what I try to focus in, and I think this is an important point for lawyers, is that it's immutable. Because of the way the cryptography operates, which is a very complicated computer science puzzle that I am not going to begin to try to explain right now, it means that the data on those transactions on a blockchain are immutable, cannot be changed. Practically speaking, if you were to try to steal Bitcoin from it would affect the transactions happening after you stole it, but it would also have to change the transactions that happened before it, because they're all linked together, literally in a chain of blocks, right? And so I'm not going to, in class, we would go through what that means and why, but for today, we could just say that it is immutable. Practically speaking, it cannot be changed. And so what I've been discussing is called what we call a permissionless blockchain. None of you need permission to log on and either mine Bitcoin or be part of Bitcoin or any of the other cryptocurrencies or any program that is running, any protocol that's running on a permissionless blockchain. We can talk later about how companies could create their own blockchain where they do give permission to people. And then the last point I want to say, and then I'm curious to hear how other people explain it actually, is that there is a way for this blockchain ledger potentially to have lots of different applications. So Bitcoin is only one of the applications that can run on a blockchain. There's sort of right now an infinite number of use cases that could use this technology. Here in California, we've talked about putting archives on a blockchain because it would be distributed. So if the archive building burns down in a wildfire, it's okay. We have a distributed copy of all of our archives. It would be immutable. No one could go in and change documents from 100 years ago because they're secure on the blockchain. And it would be transparent. So all Californians could see their archived records without having to go to the building. So that's my explanation in a nutshell.
Thank you so much. So Almudena, do you want to give us your point of view?
Yeah, I think it was a marvelous explanation and very, very clear. And maybe we can think about, you know, the functionalities of this ledger, and then further go into the use cases. No, and I think what you can do with this ledger is, in first place, have shared information which is trusted, as you said. So it is very useful for multi-party projects, for multi-party use cases. No. Then you can also, each of the records of the ledger, as you imagine it in a book, no, can be a record, which would be this shared information, trustworthy information, or it can be a program, which is what we call smart contract. The nature is an if-then. So if something is introduced, then something happens. It's of course, I think, not fully identifiable with the concept of contract in a legal sense, but you can build on contracts which are of this nature, if then. So not with too many conditions or conditionalities or these type of things, but there are a number of contractual relationships that you can automatize in using blockchain, and connecting all these parties that are linked through the blockchain, through the nodes or the wallets of the blockchain, and then you can execute the contract and you know, fulfill the obligations that have been established in the contract, in the smart contract, also in an automated way through the blockchain, in a digital, fully native digital way. This means you can fulfill the one of the obligations, and you can fulfill payment in a digital, completely digital native digital payment, which can be done either through a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin or whatever else. You can provide an NFT, an unfungible token, so a type of token or crypto asset that can also fulfill an obligation. Or we are working now on the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, which are the digital currency issued in a digital format issued by central banks. So the crypto euro, the crypto dollar, the crypto renminbi. So you can pay already through the internet, and this means also you can exchange value, which is represented in digital tokens. For me, what this means is basically the next step of the internet, because and we all know what internet has brought to us. So that's where I see the social big game changer in this technology. If you think about the internet, what we exchange in the internet is information, is data, but never value. As soon as you want to send value to another person, to exchange value, to fulfill a contractual clause which implies paying and receiving, there is a part which happens off-chain, and this is because there is a lack of trust in this digital environment, and you cannot exchange value for several reasons, but basically you can copy the information, so it's very difficult. You can put some marks, watermarks, and do things, but it's easy to copy information that is sent on the internet, and it is very difficult to link a piece of information that you send in the internet purely in a trustworthy way to a party. So what you need for value is, as you all know, identify, the asset, identify the piece of value, and then know who's the owner and who has certain rights on that piece of value. And this you cannot do on the internet, but that is precisely what blockchain brings to the sphere, the ability to use the internet not only to exchange data, but to exchange value. And this is a huge game changer at very different levels for companies, of course, because they can connect all the stakeholders that are linked to a business on the same platform, exchange information, share information, create smart contracts that make the process more automated and fulfill the obligations in the contract directly on the blockchain. And maybe to give you a very simple example, which is very down to earth and very boring, as Michelle was saying, but of course also very important in daily life. I don't know. There are, for example, there's a nice example of a recycling company. If you think about the recycling process, is amazing because there is a public sector, normally the municipality, the recycling company that organizes the whole thing. But then there is, the companies that put the how do you call it, where you put the crystal and where you put the paper that's put on the streets. Then there are other companies that take it away, and then the recycling companies that actually recycle all those materials. In this process, you have maybe 10 to 15 different companies and public sector organizations or administrations linked to the process. There is a huge issue with reconciling information. So each party has its own records. Sometimes they have different outputs. So they need first to fight, and there is a lot of conflict based on divergences in the information that each party is having on the same process. So blockchain takes all this away because they are all sharing the information on real time. A lot of this information is coming from sensors, so it's actually very neutral from personal processes or processes that are actually subject to failure, and so there is a part of issues that and conflicts that is gone, and then they automate the process with the smart contract. So when there are 3 tons of paper coming into the recycling fabric, then this comes directly into the smart contract, and the payment is directly issued. So you are also like freeing a lot of burden in the process and conflict in the process between the parties just by using this system. And maybe as a last comment also, to bring to your mind that this is very like the internet, is very cross-sector. So you can find cases in practically every sector, from tourism to automotive to social goods to NGOs to public administration to whatever you can imagine. So that makes it also a game changer in that social perspective. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Almudena. So Edwin, tell us about your views on blockchain. What is blockchain for you? What it should be for us? And
Yeah, of course. I mean, basically, just adding the both previous well, both previous talks, it's all about optimization, right? So, I mean, when the accounting started becoming, I mean, we have to acknowledge that there was a person literally keeping tabs and writing and cross-referencing, and it was all very rudimentary, you know? So the more digital the accounting became, the more optimization the companies could pursue. So now it comes this, instead of having like a centralized authority owning all the data, all the inputs, outputs, now you have a decentralized one. And what does that mean? That means anybody can trigger at the same time in every single point of Earth at the same exact time and obtain the exact same information. That's pure automatization. So that's why there's a lot of business models being built on this kind of inflows because it's pure in the sense that whatever happens in the blockchain theoretical, it happens all around in all the different nodes. So in that sense, how I see blockchain, it's the new optimization method. I mean, is it better than a centralized authority? For some reasons, it could be. For others, it might not be because now you have all this legality in the back. So you have data protection that you have to take care of. You cannot embed personal data in a determinate manner because of GDPR. So there's a lot of complexity in the back. Issuance of utility tokens and cryptocurrency. You have to take care of all these regulations. So the decentralization format, it does bring a lot of challenges. And this is where us as lawyers have to come up and say like, okay, so we have a new format that is being built on this optimizable ledger, which is public and it's accessible and it's in sometimes many aspects is free. So how can we as lawyers help into companies using this new format or new internet or however you want to call it and make it accessible even for everyone. So this is the challenges that we're literally overcoming on a day by day, not just me as a company, my fellow colleagues as lawyers, my fellow companies as survivors, because even regulation aspects try to embed everything that is happening offline or in other like Web2 formats into this pure decentralized format. So it's like, how is it's to breach both worlds, and this is where I see the opportunity in what we're doing because I do believe it's the future. It's not because I love the technology. It's just because even the world is telling us that this is the future. As Almudena said before, CBDCs. I mean, I do believe that the world is going to be tokenized. Why do I say it? Because all banks are getting ready to tokenize money. Now that's huge. Imagine, like, it's me telling you that the government is going to issue its own central bank digital currency, which is going to represent euros, is going to represent yens, is going to represent every single currency out there. Why is that? Because even banks understand that they can optimize their formats and they can embed all the characteristics that is done with blockchain. Because if it's an immutable ledger and it's accessible, that means that every transactions can be overseen by any single entity, any single person. So it becomes a very transparent thing. And that's good and bad for many things, but that's more of another conversation. So just to make it brief, how I see blockchain is just the purest form of optimization. Are we gonna get to a better system? Probably. New tech will overcome blockchain. I mean, there's a lot of talks of future like quantum technology and everything, but humanity has always gone through that optimization process. We like to optimize more because when you optimize more, you can create new business models and you can digitize yourself. And then a lot of the work that was done manually or gradually or on a P2P or me calling or me emailing, now everything becomes coding. So the more coding becomes, now that allows us to be more optimal as a human being and will allow us to innovate more and obtain new digital formats. So also optimization becomes an enabler. And that's why we're doing a lot of companies are using blockchain or entering the space because it has enabled them to overcome burdens that were not done by the Web2 or the normal digital formats. In this pure decentralization, they just became optimal. So that's how I see it.
thank you, Edwin. So you all three share the view that it's a technology that has a lot of advantages and that it will help businesses to develop. It will help optimization. It will help transactions to be easier. So any disadvantages in blockchain? Is it for sure so immutable and so sure? Because not everyone agrees on that. That will be, for me, a question. If you finally say, yes, Maria is immutable and is very sure. Then I would like you to tell us, so how can we learn about it? So first, please, can you ask my naughty question?
Should I did you notice my passion about this issue? I have been studying very strongly all these questions, basically on governance, on the governance aspects of the blockchain, and how they are built, and whether this is true or not, because we're lawyers and we're used to question everything, right? And to be the pain in the ass of everything, and the spoilers and all this. So because I'm used to doing that, I did that here as well, and I think it is very important to be extremely critical with how blockchains are built and how do we and for what we use the blockchains. And in this respect, I think it's very important to keep in mind that there is no one blockchain. Very often when blockchain is explained, we explain Bitcoin because it's the original, it has all the elements, and it's very useful to understand decentralization, which is a key element, which is also a game changer. So it's, you know, and then people stick to that model. And I think it's very important to understand that there are different blockchains, and each blockchain is a system, is creating a system in itself, and is therefore having its own governing rules, which is called the governance of the blockchain, both off-chain and on-chain, and there are aspects there which I won't get too much into detail, but depending on how the blockchain is built, you know, the outcome and the results and the risks will be different. And first of all, very often there is in the market, there are solutions that are being sold under the title and the name blockchain, because we have created this association, this mental association. Blockchain is trust, is distributed, is decentralized, and is democratic, whatever. And then you put the name blockchain to something that is actually an apple, and then people think that this is trustworthy and that you know, whatever, and that it's decentralized and all this, and that's not absolutely not true, because I've seen blockchains, or I've seen things sold as blockchain that were actually 3 nodes, and I mean actually not fulfilling the basic elements that you need to make sure that there is a certain level of decentralization, that there's a certain level of trustworthiness in the records that are introduced in the blockchain, and you know, and all this. So it is very, very important to understand the essence of the blockchain, the elements of the blockchain, and be able to assess our clients, if you're a lawyer or if you're in academia, you know, the reality that you're trying to understand and follow, and be very critical, and do not buy as blockchain everything. And also an example is very strongly in this DeFi. I don't know if this is too maybe technical for the audience, but there are these decentralized financial protocols. They are in principle in the decentralized sphere, but then when you dig in, the decentralization is not always as present as it pretends to be, or it's sold to be. And this brings issues to the table which are very crucial for us, because also in terms of, for instance, using blockchain as a valid proof in a legal procedure, in legal court, you know, this type of uses of blockchain, you need to be very sure that the level of correctness, if you want, with which this precise blockchain is built, provides the validity for the records that you're trying to use in the courts. So there are many elements there, and I think also the idea that maybe some of you, those that are older in the room, might record. Before the internet, we had these intranets. Some of you remember the intranets? There was like little internet, for those that are younger maybe and don't know this, like little internets for each company. So now we're building like this, you know, connecting dots, connecting people, being able to send information, but not the whole world connected. This only happened with the World Wide Web. And we're now in the era of, you know, the vulcanized area of blockchain. There are many, many blockchains every day. There are new blockchains being built for specific purposes with specific sets of features. We need to understand if we're in front of a blockchain or if we're in front of an application which runs on the blockchain, understanding, what is the purpose of the application, what is the blockchain on which it runs, what are the characteristics of this blockchain, and assess the client on all these elements so that they can take, valid decisions and understand the legal impact of these elements that they choose.
And I would just add one thing, if that's okay. There has already been people who have sat down and thought through when should we use blockchain and when should we not, because there are cases in which using a blockchain does present a disadvantage. So for state actors, sometimes just the learning cost of trying to learn what a blockchain is preventing state governments from actually deploying them, because it's just too expensive to learn it and to build it and deploy it. So I'm going to throw, there's been 2 reports that I've seen that have really kind of provided flow charts of here's when it's good to use blockchain and here's when it's not. And the first one is, well, I won't plug our own thing, but the California Blockchain Working Group spent a lot of time thinking about this. And that was a few years ago. The US Government Accountability Office, which is like a bureaucratic part of the federal government, wrote a report on blockchain that is actually very impressive. And for those of you who are trying to learn about blockchain, I think it's a really useful report because it's written in language that non-technical people can understand. So I'll put this in the chat, the link to the report, because it is actually includes a flow chart of here's when you should use blockchain and here's when you should not. And I think it's a pretty good explanation that you could sit down with clients and try to figure out here's where we should use it and here's where we should not. So I think that's one of the disadvantages that you mentioned, Maria, is just that the idea that people don't always need to use it just because it's the buzzword of the day or because there's so much hype around it.
Thank you. Edwin, anything to add on immutability and security and blockchain as a secure technology?
Yeah, I'm gonna go more for a philosophy side since everything was super well explained. Thank you for that. Who writes blockchain? Humans. That's it. So is it gonna be a full trustworthy system? No, because the person behind is coded by humans. But that's gonna happen with absolutely every technology. So we cannot expect something to be full trustworthy. Yes, there are mechanisms to safeguard that trustworthiness, but on the other side, you will always have bad actors. This is how it works. So for example, just to throw a quick example of, for example, in trading, in a lot of the exchanges, we think that the retails have any input or anything to say between all the movements that happens in the market. No, this is fights between algorithms and algorithms, and they call them the algo wars. Why is that? Because somebody writes a code and the other one tries to defend the coin or because of some incentives. So why I'm telling you this? It happens with blockchain, it happens with anything. Just the human factor as the risk factor, and that's gonna be always embedded in every single tech, unless something in the future happens where code writes code, and then who knows, right? But that's a little bit more on the Terminator kind of thing. So that's a joke.
And maybe something that I'm very worried about as well is the social control that might come with blockchain. And I do believe that this is a real risk because this traceability feature that you have in blockchain, depending on how, again, the blockchain is used and how it evolves and how the social use evolves, might have an impact or might have, might backfire in that respect. And I think this is a huge risk that we, especially lawyers, maybe are prepared to understand, sociologists as well, and should watch out how everything evolves and make sure democracies and individual freedom is not affected by the general use of blockchain.
Okay, so I guess that for your courses, Michelle, Almudena, and Edwin, the 3 of you are teaching this subject. You have prepared syllabus and you have given a thought to what do I teach and how do I teach it. So would you like to share with us the structure of your syllabus? Like, for instance, I was just thinking legislation on blockchain, no? You were talking about it before, Michelle, and saying, okay, when I started in 2017, there was no legislation. Now there is legislation. So what is the role of legislation? Is it the core part of the subject you teach? Are there other issues that should be taught to us legal professionals? So what shall we learn? How have you structured your courses? And you can start, any of you can start, please.
I'll start with this one just to just yeah, how I did it, even though I'm a lawyer, I did it super practical in the sense that what I wanted to transmit to the future students was like not just the theoretical part. So I brought kind of like C-level members of different crypto companies that were very deep into the space. And then I mixed it with some corporate ones, kind of like bringing Big Four. And then I brought some lawyers. So kind of like I created a little big ecosystem because I think it's important that the input comes from different kind of aspects and different kind of fields. So for example, just so to speak, I have a class that talks about meme coins. A lot of people were like, why would you create a syllabus with meme coins if there are the and I was like, you know how many projects are being built on top of meme coins, how much money top 10 coins in the world are born out of meme. Wouldn't we have to know to understand this movement or this kind of like Rogan polls and everything? Because the system itself, the ecosystem, we don't have to analyze it from a web tool or what we used to it. Every single thing that is happening in the new space doesn't necessarily have to make sense for us, but it's being built, play to earn, game, all these gamification levels. So for me, it was very important to really go deep into the space and say like, okay, we got all these different verticals. We have all these different strategies. So we, for example, why does a blockchain project is built on Telegram? Well, there's a reason for it because you want to build a community. Why do you distribute them on Discord? What are the airdrops? What are all these things? And then I bring the legality. It's like, okay, now we teach you how to build a project, but now you have to understand that everything you do has a legal consequences. So we build a lawyer. So in the sense, what I created with the master I'm doing, it's a venture builder. Kind of like it started becoming just something that we teach different verticals. We teach them how to execute. We teach them finance. We teach them legality and all that. So hopefully when they end up with the master, they can come up with the project because everybody likes to build, and hopefully we can uh, teach them how all since we are founders and co-founders of different projects, we the love for building because this is how you innovate, right? People who love to take a concept, explode it, execute it, and then monetize it. And some people really like to innovate constantly, not just for the sake of money, but just because they want to put a little, I don't know, piece of sand in the world and say like, hey, I brought this system and then I rebuilt it. And this is a lot of the blockchain aspect is innovation with a cost. That's how I like to call it because innovation is embedded into whatever they're trying to build, but they want to do a cost because they want to leave a footprint. And for somebody that comes next to say, okay, I'll grab on this footprint and completely innovate on top. And then you start creating innovation layers. And that's why blockchain is running at a quicker rate than the legislation because while the legislation is looking at the first layer, blockchain is already on layer 3, on DeFi, on farming, and all these words that the legislator is like, I have no clue what is happening, and I feel lost. And that's a problem, but an opportunity for every lawyer.
Almudena,
Yeah, I also agree. I mean, I think the real challenge with the contents of this type of courses is to keep it updated because the reality is changing almost on a daily basis. And in the last few years, maybe 2 years, also regulation has been changing on a almost daily basis or 6-month basis. So you need to understand where are the challenges and how to understand the reality in order to apply legislation. We as lawyers know, when you don't have specific legislation, you have, I mean, everything you do has a legal nature and you just need to understand. And that's why I agree with Edwin, the understanding of the underlying reality is essential because there is a big part of doing the legal work, which is, understanding the legal nature and finding how to apply the current body of legislation to that reality, even if it's not specifically blockchain related. So that's what we do. We let them understand the different elements of the blockchain. I think it's important separate maybe or divide or let students understand everything that has to do with the network and then the applications, which are, in my view, different in nature and both very important for legal assessment to the clients, because that's our perspective. Our perspective is also very, very practical for regulators and practitioners. And then, understand all the elements from a technical perspective, and then how to interpret this reality into legal terms, and what is the current status of legislation, which might be very blockchain specific legislation or not, but still is the one that we're applying because it's the one that we have. And an example would be securities law, for instance. No, for a while we didn't have anything specific, but of course, it was a matter of interpreting, the nature of the token that you had in front of you. And if it's similar to a security, then you apply a security. It's for lawyers kind of easy to understand, for business people a bit less, or it used to be a bit less, but for lawyers it's easy. So it's a matter of understanding, is this a security or not? And then how do regulators maybe understand this reality? And that's why in our case, I think maybe the advantage or that's where why we did all this previous work and continuous work in this cooperation, public-private, and having, the view of the supervisors and regulators very clear in mind on a daily basis. Also because we do consultancy, so we are following that also with the clients and with the projects that we're accompanying. So we understand where are they at the moment, and then, how to build a case from a legal perspective to be successful also with regulators and supervisors. And maybe also only that we have labs also everything that we explain, we accompany by a lab, which is very practical. So they basically do everything they learn, and they program a smart contract. We now have a space in the metaverse, so we bring them into our metaverse building and do transactions, create an NFT, and do things so that they actually do everything they learn and better understand what it is and how it is used and what is the mentality of their clients as well. Because I think that's an important thing. The language, the language of your clients, especially if they are crypto clients, if they are in the decentralization sphere and not so much in the industry sphere, it's kind of different. So you need to also adapt to what they think, how they see life, their language, their understanding of social reality, which is pretty different from what we have learned at university maybe, or we have previously seen with our other clients, and we try to bring that to them as well.
Michelle.
Well, I've learned a lot. I mean, I don't have a lab. I don't have that practical element that I've taken some notes actually. I do, there's some parallels. I do bring in guest lecturers from around the Bay Area. I even brought in a guest lecturer via Zoom this semester on NFTs from Australia. There's some Indigenous artists in Australia that are using NFTs to try to help Indigenous populations. So that was really fun. They woke up at 5 in the morning to come and Zoom into my class. But I tend to, so let me just say at the outset, the EU is so far ahead of the US on this, on the law side. And so I actually begin my semester with like a brief, we do a technical explanation, but the students still don't understand it, even after a couple of classes on technical things. So if your audience's brain is sort of swirling today, that's very normal. But what I ask my students to do is to go and research, pick a state in the United States. And they'll either pick their home state or a state they traveled to, or, New York and Texas are always included. And then everybody takes a different state, and then they have to come back and report to the class on what is the state of blockchain regulation in that particular state. Because the problem in the US is that the federal government has not stepped up with a cohesive framework. We just had one introduced in Congress yesterday with Cynthia Loomis of Wyoming and Kirsten Gillibrand of New York, but we don't have a federal framework. It's very patchwork. So the states are running ahead to try to get business in this area. So Wyoming is far ahead of every other state because they're so small. They have it's not a very populated state, and so they can be very nimble. California is like the Titanic, you know, like turning us around is going to take a really long time, and we have millions of stakeholders. And so every state is approaching this a bit differently. So we talk a bit about the kind of mess that is the United States regulatory approach to blockchain. And then we look at use cases, right? So I totally agree. This space changes every year. I mean, my first time teaching it, I felt like I had a good handle on things. Then all of a sudden last year it was NFTs. I have to drop everything for a week, learn NFTs in February of last year, teach a class on it. This semester it was DAOs, right? That like, oh, I didn't even know what a DAO was 2 years ago. Now I have to teach DAOs. I have no idea what it will be next year. Like I'll probably find out in January that this is not a new thing. And now I have to teach this. And so I like that because it keeps me on my toes. It's exciting and fun to be learning all the time. And then the last thing I do with my students is that I ask them to, and I don't do this for when I'm doing training of regulators, but I do ask my students to pick an industry that you might want to work in. So I've had students pick healthcare, taxation, wine law, which is a big thing in the Bay Area because of Napa Valley, and fashion law, whatever it is that they want to work in. And then and I asked them to write a big paper, a 15-page paper on how blockchain can help that industry. And then we do a big symposium at the end of the semester on, you know, everybody gets up and presents what they found. And it's really fun to see that blockchain can touch every single industry. And this is why I think for lawyers, it's a really important area to develop expertise in. Not just because you're going to get so many more clients. I mean, I know a lot of lawyers in San Francisco who are scrambling now to develop a blockchain expertise or an NFT expertise because they're going to get so many clients in the Bay Area. I mean, if you know NFT law and the intellectual property rights related to it in San Francisco, you're going to get a bunch of clients. Every 2 weeks, I get asked to advise a client, and I'm too busy. I'm an academic. I push them off to the law firms, right? But you're going to get a lot more clients if you do this because it does touch every industry. And I think that's one of if there's one takeaway from this for lawyers around the world, it's this: you will build your book of business if you learn about blockchain, because you'll be able to advise the many startups that are happening in this space. And now that the crypto prices are down, this is a good time to be learning this, because as soon as we come out of crypto winter and people start building more businesses again, you're gonna be on the cutting edge to be able to advise them.
I really hear that advice. Tutors, it is really hear that advice.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think maybe, we're actually creating a new economy, and maybe linking it to what the European Union is doing from a public policy perspective, which is basically, the European Commission, which is the executive arm of the EU, for those that are not Europeans, is creating its own blockchain with nodes based on public administrations in the different EU countries. So you have a network. Then you have the proposal for a new digital identity regulation, which is the eIDAS 2 regulation, which comes with a toolbox to build actual digital identity, self-sovereign identity wallets. So this is bringing identity to the digital contracting and the digital sphere, and the work on crypto euro. So if you have a network which is also partly public for public-private use cases, you have identity and you have a payment system, you are creating a new environment for a new economy, basically new digital economy. So I think everything is going to be blockchain, and whether it's not going anymore to be a purely digital encapsulated type of activity. It's going to be the reality, the contracting reality, all through industries and all through the world. And of course, in parallel, you have all this development of the metaverses and all the economy that is being built at that digital level, which is also huge. So I fully agree with Michelle that basically law firms are and also in-house counsels absolutely need to know this well, and because it's the current economy.
Okay, so we open the microphone to the audience. Anyone wants to comment, you can take the room now. You can go jump in, and Marilena is going to moderate in case we have several people wanting to participate. She will be telling you who will start. So Marilena, if you want to put your camera in so that people can see you.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I think that there is a question in the chat.
So Beatriz is asking, no?
Beatriz, if you want, you can also take the microphone. Blockchain technology sounds like a notary. Do you know how it could affect the work of notaries? Do you have any idea on that? Any actual experience? I'm thinking of Spanish notaries, traditional and conservative. You want to start first, Michelle, Almadena?
Well, I don't know traditional Spanish notaries, so I'm going to this question off.
It's true.
I mean, in theory, yes, but of course, I think there's a long way until we get there, because there is a legal effect of the activities of the notaries that it cannot currently be fulfilled by blockchain, precisely because of this balkanized world of blockchains. So first, we would need maybe a specific blockchain which is built with the features that are enough to substitute. Plus, this question could also be made for the registries, but they have a legal revision of the information that they introduce into the registries, and this is something that you do not have in the blockchain. Basically, you can introduce false information into the blockchain. So the fact that and this is maybe a clarification which is very important, the fact that the information is trustworthy doesn't mean that it is right or correct or it's the truth. You can introduce false information into the blockchain. What you have is that you can trace back the origin of that information. So this disincentivize people to introduce false information, but in theory you can put false information into it. So all these activities that these public private actors are doing to bring trust into the system cannot be fully supplemented or or substituted by a blockchain. But what I think that will happen is that they will be part of the blockchain. I mean, they will connect to the blockchain, and they will do partly their job that cannot be substituted by the blockchain. They will do it, but in a digital way. And the registries, for instance, are very, very much into it. We have educated, we have trained those that are now leading the digital commission in the registries and also in the notaries. So they are very fond of understanding, how they can bring value to this digital world, becoming also digital in the way they do their work.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Any other comments?
Any other comments? Desmond, yes, you can take the microphone.
Yes, thank you. This is such an insightful seminar. I really enjoyed it. I did have a question that was sort of connected to this technology. So with mining, and the process that's involved. I'm guessing there's a huge amount of energy that's required to kind of maintain the mines and this blockchain technology. I'm wondering if there's any regulations surrounding or limiting the use of, or just regulating the energy requirements or environmental considerations regarding blockchain in general. Actually, thanks.
Thank you.
Hot topic.
Would you like to start first, Michelle?
Sure. Yes, you are exactly right. With a type of mining called proof of work mining, which is what's used for Bitcoin, you have to run these algorithms over and over and over to try to solve the algorithmic puzzle, the cryptography puzzle that actually leads to the Bitcoin being mined. And so that's why you see these server farms in places like Iceland and Eastern Washington State in the US, where electricity is very cheap because you can run these over and over. This is a real problem that is concerning regulators in the United States and around the world. New York has been kind of jumping out ahead to say we're going to ban proof of work mining. You folks in the EU just had a huge issue with this related to EU regulation. But there is another type of mining that can be used called proof of stake mining. And that is what Ethereum is moving to. That is what, like, for example, I'm funded by the Algorand Foundation. Algorand is a carbon neutral type of blockchain. So there are lots of people who are working to try to minimize the environmental impact. And I would argue, you know, it's going to be a major problem for any proof of work mining system in the next 5 to 10 years if they can't get the environmental costs down.
Almudena, Edwin, would you like to add something?
No, I think we just I was gonna say from not from academic, from an entrepreneur, we just dodged a bullet because MiCA regulation wanted to block proof of work. If that would have come out, proof of work is thought that it's bad for the environment. It was, but they don't understand that there's a lot of clean mining that is happening. There's a company here up north from Barcelona, and all the mining that they do for Bitcoin is based on disposable waste. And they actually issue their first Bitcoin. They actually mined the first Bitcoin with zero carbon. It was positive carbon issuance. So in the sense, it's just I don't want to be mean to the legislator because they're in a different position and the social pressure and all the politics they have. But for me, it's pure ignorance. If they wanted to learn what is happening in the space, they can just see all of this and try to incentivize clean pollution and all that. I mean, it's just thank God MiCA didn't happen how it was supposed to happen. But I mean, this is like it was a win battle, but the war was not won. This is still ongoing. So let's see what happens.
And maybe take into account that, as we said before, there are many different blockchains, and each blockchain has its own way to work. And this is basically what is creating this immense energy cost is the mining. And the mining is very typical for public blockchain. So many company solutions and cases are built on private blockchains or public permission blockchains in which you don't use this general mining, this competition to create the blocks basically, which is creating the energy cost. So there are, and this is essential for their sustainability records, which, as you know by now, is also a regulatory requirement partly, and stakeholders requirement and board requirement. So it is an essential part of the decision-making process. And for instance, we're now, and also because there are many use cases that are focusing on environmental issues as well. And of course, you cannot afford, having a high energy cost if you're working for a sustainable solutions. And maybe I have an example which I'll put on the chat, which is the diversity is a European Commission project. We're working with 5 cities to reduce or to improve air quality, to reduce emissions based on diversity criteria and social impact through tokenization. So basically we incentivize citizens to contribute to air quality improvement in their cities. And we are working very heavily on choosing a blockchain of all the million blockchains that we can choose that is sustainable in the way it works. So, and there are many options, and we're picking that, and that's what also we're seeing. It's the thinking of our clients. So yes, I mean there is a battle here between decentralization and some features that companies are wanting, which sometimes make decision making tough when you're into building a use case.
Thank you a lot. Any other question? I think that the chat.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I'm going to ask you to propose as a final sentence, like your final declaration for our webinar of today, and we will close the session. We are recording this. We will create a video. We will do an infography, and yeah, thank you for much for having been with us today, for sharing your knowledge, Michelle, Edwin, and Modena. Please tell us your final sentence and whatever else you want to add. Thank you. Michelle, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, thanks to everyone. I'm excited. I will click on everything in the chat because I do think there's a lot of social good happening in this space, and that's what my focus really is. And so I would encourage attorneys, as I said, it takes some effort to learn this space. It's a very high learning curve, but that means that most people aren't doing it. So if you're one of the people who does, it will really pay off for you. I would also add, please feel free to, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, my center, I put the link to the center in the chat. Please do get in touch with us. We're really interested in learning about the social good use cases happening around the world. And so thanks so much for inviting me. This was really fun.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And Modena.
Yes, I think it is a new economy, and we need the legal aspects to build a sustainable world, which respect our values and represents or creates a society that we want. And the legal part is essential for that. So it's kind of our duty to enter this world, and also from the perspective of business. I think I agree with Michelle that it's absolutely essential. I also, just as Michelle, would like to make sure you know that we're very open. It's a collaborative institute as well, and so I'm super happy to invite you to our labs, which are also open to everyone, or read our publications, which are open to everyone, and invite you to cooperate or suggest any subjects, projects, or whatever that you have, because we're very creative also and flexible in the way we operate. So all welcomed to co-creation of this new world.
Edwin, final statement.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say, if you're gonna have fun, join the blockchain space or the crypto stuff. Every day there's a story, there's a backstory, and it's quite entertaining. I mean, when I enter here, I mean, I thought I was having fun in other fields, but here it's just so much of a mess that sometimes is bad, but so much of a mess that is good that you never knowing what's gonna happen the next day. So you
Yeah.
want to be quick and see, like, really entertain yourself, and maybe have a lot of more gray hair once you enter than when you go out, then please join the blockchain space. I assure you it's a lot of fun.
Edwin, what is Bricken looking for? What kind of profiles?
Well, right now we're doing marketing, and we're probably expanding compliance, because we're trying to build a security exchange using tokenized assets, which in Europe is at the current time not permitted. So we enter the regulatory sandbox of Spain so we can test new tech with the Spanish Security Commissioner. So the compliance level, suddenly we just decided to do some testing, and suddenly my compliance level went off the roof. And so, yeah, if you want to try it, please feel free to send me an email. I'm looking for lawyers who are interested in the space because we need them. So thanks you for that, obviously, for that comment.
We also have 2 open positions in the website, which you can check. So also for managing the legal institute. So if you're interested, happy to.
If you want to place them in the chat, then
Yes.
if it's easy, if not,
It's very easy. It's very easy.
Same for you, Edwin. If you have the link for the positions, then maybe somebody.
And we also have a headhunting area. So if you're already into the sphere and are looking for something, I'm happy to.
Okay, guys, thank you so very much. Thank you for being here, and see you. I'm not sure. I think our next event is in September already. So thank you, and we will keep you updated and tuned on legal tech innovation and digital transformation. Thank you so much. Bye bye. See you next time.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.